There is a moment in some relationships that feels deceptively peaceful. No more arguments, no more emotional confrontations, no more complaints, no more long conversations about what needs to change. To most men, that silence feels like relief. They assume the tension has finally passed and things are getting better. But relationship psychology reveals a far more unsettling truth. The most dangerous moment is not when she is angry, emotional, or raising her voice. The most dangerous moment is when she becomes calm, distant, and emotionally silent. Because anger still requires emotional investment. Frustration still means she cares enough to fight for something. But indifference is what happens when her emotional connection begins to die. And by the time a woman reaches that stage, the decision to detach may have started weeks or even months earlier while you were still convinced everything was fine. She may still smile, still answer your messages, still share the same space with you. But internally, the bond is weakening. Her heart is no longer leaning toward you the way it once did. Her attention is shifting. Her enthusiasm is fading. And the most alarming part is that these changes are often subtle enough to go unnoticed until the relationship feels almost impossible to recover. Most men do not see the warning signs because they are waiting for obvious conflict, dramatic arguments, or a clear announcement that something is wrong. But emotional detachment rarely arrives with a loud explanation. It enters quietly through shorter conversations, delayed replies, reduced affection, and a growing sense that you are no longer included in the world she is building in her mind. The woman who once shared every thought with you begins keeping things to herself. The woman who once looked forward to seeing you starts treating your presence as ordinary. The woman who once discussed future plans with excitement stops mentioning where the relationship is heading. At first, each sign seems small and easy to rationalize. But together, they form a powerful pattern that reveals her interest is fading. In this deep psychological analysis, we are going to uncover 5 of the strongest indicators that she is losing emotional attraction and mentally withdrawing from the relationship. We will examine why active conflict often gives way to total indifference, what delayed responses reveal about changing priorities, why emotional warmth begins to disappear, and what it means when she no longer includes you in her vision of the future. More importantly, you will learn how to interpret these behaviors without panic, without chasing, and without sacrificing your self-respect. Because recognizing the truth early gives you something many men lose in emotionally confusing relationships: clarity. And clarity allows you to respond with strength rather than desperation. Stay with me, because once you understand these patterns, you will never mistake silence for security again. And you may recognize signs that could save your dignity, your emotional health, and your ability to move forward with confidence. Most people move through relationships on instinct, reacting, assuming, repeating. But a few choose something different. They pause, they observe, they understand. If you're the kind of person who questions patterns instead of blindly following them, who wants clarity instead of confusion, awareness instead of reaction, then you're exactly where you need to be. This isn't about taking sides. It's about seeing things for what they are, without distortion, without ego. If that mindset speaks to you, subscribe and stay connected. Add your perspective in the comments. The conversation matters here. Background work. No narratives. Just deeper understanding and better decisions. To understand why interest fades, we have to look at a concept called the emotional investment bank. In every relationship, both people make small deposits of time, energy, and care. When a woman is highly interested, she is constantly making deposits. She asks about your day, she plans for the weekend, and she worries about your well-being. But when she begins to lose interest, she stops making these deposits. She starts to withdraw her energy. The first sign this is happening is something we call the death of conflict. Many men hate it when their partner complains or nags, but in reality, nagging is a sign that she still cares enough to want things to be better. When she stops complaining, it usually means she no longer thinks the relationship is worth the effort of an argument. She has moved from caring enough to fight to not caring enough to speak. Another major sign is a change in response latency. This is a technical term for a very simple behavior: how long it takes her to reply to you. When interest is high, communication is fast and full of energy. But when interest drops, you will notice that it takes her hours or even days to reply to a simple text. When she does reply, the messages are short, often just one word like, okay, or yeah. This is a behavioral trend that shows you are no longer a priority in her mind. She is not too busy. She is simply choosing to spend her mental energy elsewhere. In psychology, we observe that people always find time for what they value. If you find yourself waiting by the phone for a girl who used to text you instantly, the balance of interest has shifted. Let's look at the story of a man named Kevin. Kevin was in a relationship for 2 years and thought everything was going well because his girlfriend had stopped bothering him about spending too much time playing video games. He thought she was finally becoming chill. He didn't notice that she had also stopped asking him to go on walks or telling him about her work. Kevin was so comfortable that he stopped putting in effort himself. One day, she told him she wanted to break up. Kevin was shocked and tried to argue, but she was calm and cold. Kevin's mistake was misinterpreting her silence for peace. He didn't realize that she had spent the last 6 months quietly quitting the relationship. Because Kevin ignored the signs of her withdrawal, he lost the chance to fix the issues when they were still small. He learned that the lack of noise in a relationship can often be the most deafening warning sign of all. A third sign is the loss of curiosity. When someone loves you, they are curious about your mind. They want to know your opinions, your dreams, and your daily thoughts. When a woman is losing interest, she stops asking why. She stops asking, how do you feel? The conversation becomes very functional. You only talk about things like what to eat for dinner or what time the mail arrives. This is a sign of emotional distancing. She is building a wall between your inner worlds. She no longer wants to be connected to your soul. She is just coexisting in the same space. If you feel like you are talking to a roommate instead of a partner, it is a strong indication that her heart is moving away. The fourth sign is physical disconnection. This is not just about the bedroom. It is about small touches. When interest is high, there is a lot of incidental touch. Holding hands, a touch on the shoulder, or sitting close on the couch. When a woman loses interest, she subconsciously creates physical distance. She might sit on a different chair or turn her body away from you when you speak. This is an ancient human behavior. We move toward what we like and away from what we dislike. If she feels stiff when you hug her, or if she finds excuses to avoid being close to you, her body is telling a story that her words have not said yet. Finally, the fifth sign is the vanishing future. In a healthy relationship, people use the word we when talking about next month or next year. We should go to that concert, or we should save for a trip. When a woman loses interest, the word we disappears. She starts talking about I and my. She might make plans for a vacation with her friends without mentioning you. She is mentally rehearsing a life where you are not present. She is decoupling her future from yours. When a person stops including you in their vision of tomorrow, it is because they don't plan on being there with you. Observations of human behavior show that these signs usually happen in a slow sequence. It starts with the mind, moves to the emotions, and finally shows up in the physical world. A high-value man does not ignore these signs, nor does he beg for attention when he sees them. Instead, he observes the data. He realizes that you cannot force someone to be interested in you. If you see these patterns emerging, the best thing you can do is to match her energy. Step back. Focus on your own life and your own goals. Sometimes, giving someone the space to lose you is the only way they can realize they actually want to keep you. But more importantly, it protects your own self-respect. Understanding these triggers helps you avoid the desperation trap. When a man senses a woman is pulling away, his instinct is often to chase harder. He buys more gifts, sends more texts, and asks, "What's wrong?" 50 times a day. But in relationship psychology, chasing a person who is pulling away only makes them run faster. It confirms to them that they have all the power and that you are needy. To maintain attraction, you must stay grounded. You must be willing to let go if the other person is no longer participating in the emotional investment bank. The real goal of recognizing these signs is not to become paranoid, but to become aware. A man who is aware is never truly blindsided. He sees the shifts in the weather before the storm hits. By watching these behavioral trends, you can make better decisions for your own future. You can choose to have an honest conversation, or you can choose to begin your own process of moving on. Your value as a man does not go down just because one person's interest has faded. You are still the same man. You are just receiving new information about where you stand in her life. We have looked at the 5 behavioral patterns that indicate a woman is emotionally checking out of a relationship. From the death of conflict to the vanishing future, these signs are the psychological milestones of a fading connection. Now, we must understand how to navigate this difficult phase without losing your dignity or your mind. When interest fades, many men fall into a state of performance anxiety, where they try to earn her love back through grand gestures. But psychology shows us that attraction cannot be bought. It must be felt through respect and independence. In relationship dynamics, there is a concept called the law of least interest. This observation suggests that the person who is least interested in a relationship has the most power. When a woman starts to lose interest, she naturally gains more power because she is no longer afraid of losing you. If you react by chasing her, you give her even more power, which actually makes you less attractive. To flip this dynamic, you must regain your outcome independence. This means you must reach a point where you are okay with the relationship ending if it is no longer healthy. When she senses that you are no longer trapped by her approval, it often triggers a sudden reevaluation of your value in her mind. If this is hitting, it's because you're not here for noise. You're here to understand. Most people react. Few people step back and actually think. This space is for those who question before they conclude and look deeper instead of louder. If that's how you move, subscribe and stay tapped in. Drop your perspective below. That's where the real conversations happen. Clarity over confusion. Awareness over assumption. Now let's go deeper. One of the most important behaviors to implement when you see these signs is mirroring. If she is giving you 20% of her energy, you should not give 100% to make up the difference. You should give 20%. This is not a game. It is a way to maintain the emotional balance of the relationship. When you mirror her distance, it forces her to feel the void that her own behavior has created. If you fill that void with your constant attention, she never has to face the consequence of her fading interest. But if you step back, she is forced to decide if she wants to move closer to you or let the connection fade away completely. Either way, you get the clarity you need. Let's look at a story of growth and quiet strength featuring a man named Daniel. Daniel noticed that his partner of 3 years had become very distant. She was always on her phone. She stopped asking about his business, and she often made plans with her friends without inviting him. Instead of begging for her time or getting angry, Daniel decided to focus entirely on himself. He went back to the gym, he started a new project at work that required long hours, and he stopped being the first one to text her in the morning. At first, she didn't seem to notice, but after a month, she saw that Daniel was becoming a better, stronger version of himself, and he didn't seem to need her as much. She realized that she was losing a high-value man. This positive outcome happened because Daniel chose self-improvement over self-pity. By working on himself, Daniel either made himself more attractive to her or made himself more ready for a better woman. He learned that the only person you can truly control in a relationship is yourself. We also need to look at the psychology of response. Many men make the mistake of asking, "Why are you acting like this?" Or "Do you still love me?" While she is in the middle of losing interest, these questions are pressure points. They make the woman feel even more smothered and pushed away. A high-value man observes the behavioral data instead of asking for verbal reassurance. Words can lie, but behavior always tells the truth. If her behavior says she is losing interest, believe her behavior. Don't wait for her to say the words. By accepting the reality of her behavior, you can start making moves to protect your own heart and your own future. Another psychological trend is the social media trap. When a man feels a woman is pulling away, he often starts stalking her social media, to see who she is with or what she is doing. This is digital self-harm. Keeps your brain in a state of high stress and prevents you from focusing on your own goals. If you see the 5 signs we discussed, the best thing you can do is to put your phone down. Stop looking for clues in her stories and start looking for opportunities in your own life. When you stop watching her, you start living for yourself. And that is where your power comes from. We must also discuss the final conversation. If the signs continue and the relationship reaches a breaking point, you must handle the end with dignity. Avoid the urge to cry, beg, or insult her. Simply state the facts. I've noticed that our connection has changed, and it seems like we are no longer on the same page. I value honesty and effort, and since those are no longer present, I think it's best we go our separate ways. This clean break is much more powerful than a long, messy argument. It shows that you are a man of high standards who knows his worth. It leaves her with a memory of a strong man, which is much better than leaving her with a memory of a desperate one. Observations of human behavior suggest that interest often fades because the challenge has disappeared. If you become too predictable, too safe, or too stagnant, the psychological spark can die out. This is why you must never stop growing. A man should always be a work in progress. You should always be learning a new skill, reading a new book, or chasing a new goal. When you are always evolving, you remain a mystery to be solved. She will stay interested because she never knows what the new version of you will look like next year. In the end, recognizing that she is losing interest is not a sign of failure. It is simply a sign that the current dynamic is no longer working. You have the power to change yourself, and in doing so, you change the world around you. Your life is a grand story, and one person's fading interest is just a small chapter. Don't let a sign become a sentence. Use these observations to sharpen your awareness, build your self-respect, and move toward a life where you are truly valued and appreciated. The most important thing to remember is that you are the prize in your own life. If someone is losing interest in the prize, it is their loss, not yours. Keep your head high, stay focused on your mission, and always be willing to walk toward a future that respects your value. Making it to this point says more than you think. Most people skim the surface. They hear just enough to react, but not enough to understand. You stayed, which means you're willing to sit with ideas, to question patterns, and to see things more clearly than most. That's where real growth begins. If this perspective gave you something to think about, stay connected. Subscribe, and be part of a space where we don't rush to judge. We learn to understand. Leave your thoughts below, not to argue, but to add depth to the conversation. Keep sharpening your awareness. I'll meet you in the next one.